I need freedom, Billie, and I'll take it no matter what. Those were Tola's words before she blocked me, packed her bags, and vanished on a vacation she didn't even invite me to. She thought she was in control, but little did she know, I had already disappeared quietly, leaving behind only a trail of subtle truths she would never see coming. What unfolded next will make you question trust, love, and the power of walking away. Viewers, have you ever felt powerless while someone close to you plotted behind your back? Drop your story in the comments. Subscribe, like, comment, and watch till the ending to share this interesting story to family and friends. My name is Billie James. I'm 34, a freelance photographer based in California. I've spent most of my life chasing moments, freezing smiles, golden sunsets, fleeting expressions, but I never imagined I would fail to capture the truth about my own life. Honesty has always been my compass, loyalty my creed, yet the person I trusted the most, the woman I called my wife, had other plans. The morning she left, the world seemed normal. Sunlight spilled through the blinds like it had for years. Birds sang in the backyard. But everything I thought I knew, everything I believed about us, was about to collapse. I woke to the emptiness of our bedroom. The sheets were still warm on one side where she had slept, yet the other side felt like a void, a physical echo of the absence I could not yet name. Tola had left early. She hadn't said goodbye. Her phone was gone, her bag missing, and most cruelly I was blocked on everything, her Instagram, her WhatsApp, even the number I had memorized by heart. A subtle receipt on the nightstand caught my eye, almost mocking me, a luxury hotel she hadn't mentioned. I frowned at it. The date matched her vacation story, but the hotel was one I didn't recognize. Something about the precision of it, the neatness of the plan, made my chest tighten. She had planned this without me. I remember the first time I noticed the subtle cracks in her behavior, though I ignored them then. California had been warm that year, but she had come home from work that Tuesday in a haze. I remember her leaning against the doorway, twisting the bracelet on her wrist, the one she'd bought on a solo trip to San Diego before we met. "I just need some space, Billie," she'd said, her voice soft but distant. I had smiled, reassured her, made promises about patience, never realizing that moment had planted the seed for what would unfold now. I was the one trapped in love. She had been free all along, waiting for a moment to act. The sunlight in the bedroom felt harsher than it should have. I sat on the edge of the bed, my camera bag still packed from a shoot the day before, untouched. The notification of being blocked glowed on my laptop screen, a silent accusation. I stared at it. My mind raced through every conversation we'd had over the last 6 months. The little lies she had told, the small disappearances, the evasive answers about her girls' nights. It all began to look like a map of betrayal, an itinerary leading me to this moment. I thought about my own past too, my history of trusting the wrong people. Years ago, in my early 20s, I had fallen in love with someone whose duplicity had left scars I swore I'd never allow again. I promised myself I would never act impulsively, never let anger dictate my actions. I would observe, wait, and then respond with clarity. The lesson I had learned painfully in New York was about to guide me here. And then my eyes caught the hotel receipt again. Femi. That name was printed on it, the name of a man I didn't recognize. My pulse quickened. I didn't even know who he was, yet I could feel the weight of betrayal before I had a full picture. I felt my stomach drop as a flashback hit me. Tola laughing with a colleague last Christmas, the way she leaned into him slightly too long, the flirtatious tone in her voice she had brushed off as humor. I had dismissed it. Now the pieces were coming together, each one a knife twisting into the side of a naive love. I didn't scream, didn't cry, at least not yet. I just sat there, the morning stretching in front of me like a warning. Today everything would change. Today I would decide whether I would confront, react, or vanish. And somewhere deep inside, a cold voice whispered that this time, I would leave on my own terms. The first hours without her were like walking through fog. Every familiar object in our apartment felt tauntingly foreign. The mug she always left in the sink, her scarf draped over the chair, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. I tried calling her again, my hands shaking over the phone, tapping her name, waiting for the call to go through. But every attempt ended the same. Silence, or worse, the cruel confirmation that I was blocked. I leaned back on the couch and let my mind wander, letting instinct take over. Something wasn't right, and deep down I knew it. Tola had been acting strangely for months, though I had wanted to believe she was just stressed or overwhelmed. I remembered the way she would come home from work, tired, eyes darting to the floor instead of mine, avoiding conversations that required more than a word or two. I had chalked it up to the demands of her job, to her need for space. but now that space felt deliberate, like a prelude I hadn't noticed. I opened my laptop to distract myself, scrolling through emails with the half-hearted hope that some mundane task would anchor me. That's when I saw it, an email sent to me by mistake, one she hadn't meant for my eyes. The subject line had her name, Tola, and beneath it, details of a hotel booking I had never heard of, with a man's name I didn't recognize, Femi. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen as the letters blurred, my heart hammering in disbelief. Flashbacks hit me like a wave. I remembered Tola's early relationships, how in her 20s she had been cheated on repeatedly. She would tell me late at night, eyes red from tears, how those experiences had shaped her. A constant need for control, a fear of being trapped, a desire for freedom above all else. At the time, I had nodded and comforted her, thinking it was just a story, a past that wouldn't touch our present. But now, it seemed that lesson in self-preservation had become her blueprint. I ran my hands through my hair, pacing the room. I could feel the adrenaline of impending confrontation bubbling in my chest, yet I reminded myself of the lesson I'd learned long ago, the one from New York, from the relationship that had left me broken but wiser. I would not act rashly. Observation first, understanding second, and only then decisive action. I pulled out my phone again, checking every corner of social media, scrolling through old messages, searching for any clue, any pattern. That's when the memories hit hardest. The small evasions, the half-truths, the stories that never quite added up. How she would meet friends after work, only to return home with a fragrance I didn't recognize. How she would sometimes laugh at her phone, tucked away like a secret. I had ignored the signs, excused them as harmless quirks, but each one was now a breadcrumb leading to betrayal. I sat back down, trying to steady my breathing. I could feel anger rising, a slow burn, but I swallowed it, letting cold clarity take over. If she had planned this, if she had orchestrated it while pretending to love me, then the game had changed. I would have to match her cunning, her premeditation, with patience and precision. Somewhere in the depths of my memory, a small, bitter voice whispered, "This isn't just about a vacation. It's about control. It's about who gets to write the ending." And for the first time that morning, I felt the tiniest spark of anticipation, not for confrontation, not for anger, but for reclaiming the narrative of my life. Don't forget to subscribe. I decided I needed answers, but not from confrontation. Not yet. I needed clarity, proof, and a way to see the truth without it being filtered through her carefully constructed lies. So I went to Tola's friends, the ones she leaned on for gossip, advice, and sometimes cover-ups. I told them I just wanted to catch up, casual conversation over coffee. I smiled, tried to seem lighthearted, but inside I was anything but. The cafe smelled of roasted coffee beans and pastries, the kind of place Tola would have loved. Her friends arrived in staggered intervals. Ada, her childhood friend, greeted me first. She smiled, but there was a hesitation in her eyes, a flicker of something that told me she knew more than she let on. I could feel it. The atmosphere was tense, the space between us almost tangible. I ordered a cappuccino, letting the foam and the cinnamon mask the knot of anxiety in my stomach. As we chatted, the conversation was safe, mundane. Work stories, weekend plans, nothing that could betray her secret. But Ada kept glancing at her phone, fingers twitching, her lips pressed tightly together whenever I looked at her. Something in her body language betrayed guilt or fear, and my instinct screamed at me that the truth was close. I remembered back when Ada had once accidentally revealed to Tola that a boy she liked had a crush on someone else, and how Tola had praised her for discretion. Ada's loyalty was selective, and now I understood whose side she had been on. I sipped my cappuccino, pretending to be relaxed as my eyes casually swept over her phone lying face up on the table. My pulse quickened when I saw the faint notification of a group chat pop up. The name caught my attention, Vacation Fun Palm Tree. I leaned slightly closer under the guise of stretching, and Ada's phone vibrated. A message preview flashed across the screen. My heart skipped. Femi's name, accompanied by a teasing emoji, appeared in the text. Flirtatious messages. The kind of messages that left no room for interpretation. I froze. My mind flashed back to small, seemingly insignificant moments. The slight smirk she'd given her phone during lunch breaks, the time she had chosen to catch up with friends, when she could have been home. Every memory I had brushed aside now came alive with new meaning. The hotel receipt, the blocked phone, Femi's name, everything lined up. Ada finally noticed my stare and quickly snatched the phone toward her. Her hands shook slightly, betraying nerves she tried desperately to mask. "It's nothing," she said, but her voice trembled. In that instant I knew she had been protecting Tola. She had been shielding the truth, and yet, her slip had revealed more than she intended. I smiled faintly, carefully, without letting her see the storm raging inside me. For the first time I felt the power shift. I wasn't lost or confused anymore. I had the breadcrumbs. I had the path that would lead me to the full picture of Tola's betrayal. And I knew that when the time came, I could act in a way that would change everything. As we left the cafe, I noticed Ada glancing back at me nervously, and I realized I was already writing the story in my head, scene by scene, proof by proof. I would follow it quietly, carefully, and one day she would discover that I had seen the whole truth long before she thought I did. I went home that evening feeling hollow but strangely focused. My apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like the stage of a crime I had only begun to unravel. I sat at the edge of the couch, the city lights of California flickering through the window, and tried to collect my thoughts. I knew the next step was confrontation, but not yet face to face. I needed proof she couldn't deny, a trail she had left for me to follow, whether intentionally or not. The first place I looked was email. I opened the thread she had accidentally sent to me, the hotel booking, the name Femi, the precise dates of her solo vacation. My chest tightened as the pieces clicked together. She hadn't just blocked me on social media, she had orchestrated everything. Every lie, every disappearance, every evasive answer over the last 6 months wasn't impulsive, it was calculated. I thought about Femi, though I barely knew him. Her colleague, charming, confident, with a reputation for seducing women in precarious situations. I remembered the subtle hints I had ignored. His name popping up on her messages when she thought I wasn't looking, the way her laughter sometimes held a double meaning during office gossip sessions she'd relayed. Back then I had dismissed it as paranoia, but now every detail felt like a roadmap to betrayal. I called her via email, carefully choosing my words. I wasn't angry, not yet. I asked simple questions, letting them hang in the digital void. Of course, there was no reply, only the dreaded red notification blinking at me like a mocking pulse. I imagined her somewhere, smiling at her phone, oblivious to the storm building on the other side of the screen. Memories of our first year together flashed sharply, painfully. I remembered the night we moved into this apartment, the California skyline gleaming behind us. Tola had laughed as we unpacked, claiming she had never felt so free, so home. I had believed her completely. I had trusted her. That night had been a lie, a perfect scene masking cracks I hadn't noticed until now. The shadows in my apartment seemed longer that night, stretching across the floor like fingers pointing at my failure to see the truth. I looked at the blinds, the way the city lights fractured through them, and felt the cold clarity of realization. This was not an accident. She had planned this, the blocking, the vacation, the pretense. She wanted to control the narrative, to dictate how our story ended. And that's when the first pulse of a plan began to form in my mind. I would not react impulsively. I would not beg or plead. I would watch. I would wait. I would let her think she had won while quietly reclaiming control. There was power in patience, and I had learned that lesson the hard way in my 20s, when I had trusted someone else who had used my love against me. I leaned back, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. The anger had not yet fully arrived, but the focus had. I would track the truth step by step, and when the time came she would understand that every move she had made had been seen. Every secret, every manipulation, every lie would eventually reach its conclusion, and it would not be what she expected. For now I waited, watching quietly, like a shadow she could not detect, following the breadcrumbs she had carelessly, or deliberately, left behind. And in that silence I understood something fundamental. She had underestimated me. Don't forget to click the subscribe button. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The anger was there, simmering beneath the surface, but it wasn't my guiding force anymore. This time I would act differently. I had a plan, one that required patience, precision, and the ability to disappear completely without leaving her a single chance to manipulate the outcome. I would leave quietly on my own terms. I had a photography contract in Dubai, a project I had been offered months ago but postponed because I wanted to stay for Tola, for us. I had sacrificed a career-defining opportunity for love, believing in us, believing in her. Now that same opportunity became my lifeline, my escape, my silent revenge. I packed my suitcase with deliberate care, each item a marker of intention, each folded piece of clothing a symbol of control regained. As I folded my shirts, memories of our first trip to California's coast flickered through my mind. I had surprised her with a weekend getaway to Big Sur, thinking it would solidify our bond. She had smiled, yes, but there was always a part of her drifting, her eyes searching the horizon as if freedom lay beyond my reach. I had dismissed it as restlessness, now I realized it had been the earliest warning. She had always needed an escape plan, I had been merely a temporary anchor. I made sure to leave the apartment in perfect order, as if I had never been there, leaving only subtle hints of my departure. A few notes tucked into books she frequently read, carefully worded so she would feel the weight of being seen without knowing exactly what I knew. I didn't want her to understand fully, not yet. That power would come later, when she discovered the emptiness I had left behind. Before leaving, I sat at the window overlooking the city. The sun was rising over California, casting long shadows across the skyline. I remembered the countless mornings we had shared here, drinking coffee, laughing about trivial things. Every memory now carried a bittersweet edge. I could feel the weight of my decision settling in, but for the first time in weeks, it was accompanied by relief. I was reclaiming myself, my time, my life. I glanced at her favorite journal lying on the coffee table. Opening it, I left a single cryptic note on the last page. I saw everything. And I chose my path. The words weren't a threat, not really, they were a declaration. A reminder that while she had tried to control the story, I had finally taken control of the narrative. At the airport, I moved through security with practiced ease. My suitcase wheels echoed softly on the polished floors, a steady rhythm that mirrored my heartbeat. Flashbacks of Tola blocking my number, of her carefree vacation selfies, of Femi's teasing messages, all merged into a quiet resolve. This wasn't abandonment, it was liberation, the culmination of years of patience, of watching, of understanding the patterns of betrayal. As I boarded the plane, California shrinking beneath me, I felt a strange mixture of sorrow and empowerment. I was leaving behind more than a city, I was leaving behind a version of myself that had trusted blindly. Ahead, there was a chance for reinvention, for clarity, and for the silent satisfaction that sometimes, the best revenge isn't confrontation. It's walking away before the other person even realizes the game is over. I watched from a distance, through the thin veil of social media, as Tola's vacation unfolded without me. The images she posted, smiling selfies on sunlit balconies, cocktails clutched delicately between her fingers, beaches stretching endlessly behind her should have angered me, should have made me feel smaller, abandoned. But instead I felt a strange sense of calm. I was outside her bubble now, free to see the truth she had tried so desperately to hide. The first photo that truly struck me showed her laughing, and in the background Femi's arm rested lightly around her waist. My pulse quickened despite myself. Flashbacks of last year's office party hit me, the way she had leaned into him just slightly too long, the sly glances she thought I didn't notice. Each memory, once fleeting and dismissible, now felt like evidence meticulously recorded by my mind. Tola had blocked me to create a vacuum, but in that vacuum I could see clearly. I remembered the night I had stayed up late editing photos from our anniversary trip. Tola had been texting me, distracted, one hand on her phone, the other absent-mindedly tracing the rim of her wine glass. I had laughed then, thinking she was tired. Now the pattern was unmistakable. Femi wasn't a stranger. He wasn't a random flirtation. He had been the invisible thread weaving itself into our lives for months, and Tola had followed it with the precision of someone who believed they were untouchable. I scrolled further and found message previews, subtle glimpses of exchanges I had once missed, teasing emojis, late-night replies, hints of secrecy. Each small detail, when pieced together, formed the outline of a betrayal so precise it made my chest tighten. And yet I did not rush, did not react. I had learned patience once, painfully, and I knew that observing, waiting, and timing my moves would yield far more satisfaction than any impulsive confrontation. I spent that afternoon going through old photographs, the ones she didn't see me take, the ones I had hidden. I noticed her expressions, the slight flickers of thought behind her eyes, moments when she looked at her phone or across the room, a shadow of distraction that never made sense before. Now it was a map, each photo a marker of the true narrative she had been living without me. By evening I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't spiraling into jealousy. I was collecting truth, piecing together the betrayal in quiet, deliberate steps. And as I sipped my coffee, watching the California sunset light up the horizon even as I sat thousands of miles away, I felt my plan taking form in its final, potent clarity. I would not react. I would not plead. I would simply allow the revelation of my absence to speak louder than any words I could utter. Weeks passed and her return approached. I had left everything behind, not just the city, not just the apartment, but the part of me that had been tethered to her whims and manipulations. When Tola finally arrived back, the apartment she had expected to greet her, The life she assumed would be waiting was empty. No note, no call, nothing, just the faint echo of absence that screamed louder than any confrontation ever could. I had already left, quietly, deliberately, reclaiming control. I remembered the mornings when she would complain about feeling confined, about needing space to breathe. I had promised her patience, understanding, love. And now, ironically, space she so desperately desired had been delivered on my terms, in my silence. Watching her frantic calls and unread messages, the dawning horror on her face as she realized I wasn't coming back, was both quiet and devastating. Yet I did not revel in cruelty. There was sorrow, a bitter ache for what had been lost. I remembered our first trip together to California's coastline, the laughter and promise of forever, now rendered fragile and distant. I had loved her completely, and the memory stung, not because she had betrayed me but because I had once believed in us. Her friends whispered about her desperation. She called, left voicemails, posted pleas on social media, all hints of vulnerability I had never seen before. In that, I found a strange satisfaction, not in hurting her but in knowing that she could not manipulate, could not control, could not rewrite the story she had attempted to dictate. I had reclaimed the narrative. Days later, a package arrived at my new address. Inside, a postcard written in her delicate hand read, "I don't understand why you left." I smiled faintly. She had been given the perfect opening, yet she could not comprehend that it wasn't about leaving, it was about taking control, about choosing a path that preserved my dignity, my life, my future. As I walked along the balcony of my new apartment, watching the California skyline stretch out like a promise, I reflected. Life is unpredictable, betrayal is painful, but sometimes the quietest act of revenge, the decision to walk away, speaks the loudest. I had left, yes, but I had also regained myself, and that was far more powerful than any confrontation. And then my phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed across the screen, a faint ripple of intrigue, a whisper that the story wasn't entirely over. Smiling, I pocketed the phone. Some stories have no neat endings. Some truths linger, waiting for their moment. But for now I was free, and that freedom was mine alone. Subscribe, like, comment for more interesting stories.